The global icon question that shocks America: is Jungkook already surpassing Timothée Chalamet and Harry Styles? Or are we witnessing a cultural shift the world isn't ready to admit? What if the biggest global icon of this generation isn't the Hollywood heartthrob in a couture suit on a red carpet, nor the British rock star with million-dollar tour outfits, but a Korean superstar whose influence refuses to be confined by language, geography, or cultural bias? What if the question American media is suddenly forced to confront and can no longer escape is whether Jungkook of BTS has quietly, steadily, and undeniably outgrown the very mold Western pop culture once used to measure fame? This debate erupted with unexpected intensity when GQ US released an article placing Jungkook side by side with Timothée Chalamet and Harry Styles, two names long considered untouchable in the Western hierarchy of male global icons. For years, the concept of global stardom in the American sphere revolved around familiar faces: the indie film prodigy with a razor-sharp jawline and Oscar nominations, the fashion-defying pop darling who built a reputation on reinvention. Yet suddenly, an undeniable force from Seoul has entered the arena, bringing numbers, impact, and cultural momentum that challenge everything the West thought it understood about star power. But how did this comparison begin? Why did it spark such an emotional tug-of-war between Hollywood loyalists and K-pop globalists? And why does Jungkook's name consistently dominate metrics while certain corners of the Western entertainment world still hesitate to acknowledge him as the true icon? The answers lie within the currents of influence, identity, media narratives, and the shifting architecture of global pop culture, currents that America can no longer steer on its OW and AS. The GQ article circulated across the internet. Fans, critics, analysts, and even fashion insiders began asking the same question with increasing urgency. Who is the real global icon of this generation? Jungkook, Timothée Chalamet, or Harry Styles? Or is the debate itself exposing a much deeper shift in the world's cultural center of gravity? To understand why this story has become an emotional battleground, we must begin where the shock first emerged: the numbers. Engagement metrics, streaming data, social traction, digital influence, brand conversion rates. Every measurable indicator overwhelmingly favors Jungkook. While Chalamet and Harry each have powerful fandoms and both command strong influence in film, fashion, and music respectively, the scale at which Jungkook operates is simply different. Analysts point out that he doesn't just trend, he overtakes platforms. He doesn't just move audiences, he moves markets. He doesn't simply participate in global culture, he shifts it. And this is exactly where the debate gets complicated. American media has long shaped the narrative of what qualifies as iconic. Yet now, the same voices that once set the standard must acknowledge a star who grew outside their system, independent of Hollywood machinery, Western award circuits, and English-language mainstream exposure. When GQ placed Jungkook in the same tier as Chalamet and Styles, they weren't just publishing another celebrity comparison, they were breaking a long unquestioned pattern. Suddenly, for the first time on a major US platform, the idea of iconic male celebrity was no longer automatically Western by default. It is this disruption, this shift in ownership of cultural narrative, that ignited emotion on both sides. Some Hollywood fans argued that influence should be defined by filmography, magazine covers, and legacy within the Western entertainment complex. To them, Chalamet represents prestige and artistry, while Styles represents evolution and creative freedom. Both, in their eyes, uphold the traditional markers of Western iconography. But then came the counterargument from global fans who brought receipts the size of a digital mountain. Jungkook isn't merely famous, he is omnipresent. Every song release, every fashion appearance, every brand collaboration becomes an international event. His numbers break records once considered unbreakable. His presence shifts algorithms. His content goes viral not for shock value, but because the world is genuinely invested in him. His influence isn't regional, it's planetary. Where is the disconnect? Why does the data paint one picture while certain conversations still cling to another? Because the debate is no longer about whether Jungkook is influential. That question has already been answered by charts, trends, and engagement data impossible to argue against. The real question, The one creating friction, fear, pride, and emotional backlash is whether the world is ready to accept that the definition of a global icon no longer belongs exclusively to the West. As the story gained traction, American commentators began expressing a mixture of admiration, disbelief, and reluctant acknowledgement. How does one compare an actor known for art house brilliance to a singer who commands stadiums without lifting a finger? How does one weigh the cultural impact of Harry Styles' fashion experimentation against Jungkook's ability to create global fashion trends simply by wearing a sweatshirt in a 10-second clip? At what point do the rules of measurement themselves become outdated? Every angle of this debate circles back to the same core issue. Global influence can no longer be measured through a Western lens alone, and this is where the emotional dimension intensifies. For Hollywood loyalists, Chalamet and Styles represent tradition, a familiar idea of global fame rooted in Western storytelling. For international audiences, Jungkook represents the era of borderless entertainment, cultural diversity, and decentralized influence. He represents the rise of an artist whose success was not handed to him by Hollywood, but earned through global support that transcends language and geography. Media analysts in the US are now openly questioning whether America is prepared for a world where its celebrities are no longer automatically the standard bearers of global culture. If the most impactful male celebrity today is Korean, what does that say about the changing dynamics of power in the entertainment industry? What does it say about who shapes the cultural zeitgeist moving forward? And what does it say about the millions of fans who now consume global entertainment as easily as they once consumed Hollywood-exclusive media? This is not simply a debate about three celebrities. It is a referendum on cultural dominance, and perhaps the most surprising twist. Even as the debate intensifies, Jungkook himself remains silent, steady, and focused, unaffected by the noise, uninterested in the thrones so many insist he is claiming. But isn't this, in itself, a trait of true iconography? The ability to inspire global waves without demanding them? The ability to evolve without explanation? The ability to transcend conversation rather than chase it? Meanwhile, Timothée Chalamet continues rising in the film world, acclaimed for roles that amplify his artistic credibility. Harry Styles continues shaping the fashion and music landscape with his fearless sense of self. Both remain icons in their own right. Yet the question that refuses to fade, the question American media keeps circling back to, is whether Jungkook has quietly surpassed them in a way that reshapes the very definition of the word icon. As long as the numbers keep climbing, as long as his influence remains unrivaled, and as long as global culture continues shifting toward inclusivity, diversity, and non-Western narratives, the debate will not only continue, it will intensify. So what happens next? Will American media fully embrace Jungkook as the definitive icon of this generation? Will Hollywood fans eventually accept that influence today is measured by global resonance, not Western visibility? Or will the conversation become even more charged as K-pop expands its dominance? That is the cliffhanger America now faces, a question echoing through every platform, every analysis, every fandom. Is Jungkook the true global icon of the era, or is the world simply witnessing the beginning of a cultural transformation far bigger than any single celebrity? And perhaps the more unsettling question is this: what if the answer has already been decided, just not by those who once believed they controlled the narrative? But perhaps the most electrifying layer to this cultural moment is the growing realization that the debate surrounding Jungkook, Timothée Chalamet, and Harry Styles is no longer about simply comparing careers. It is about confronting who gets to decide the meaning of iconic. For decades, Western entertainment culture shaped the global barometer of influence. Now, whether the US mainstream is ready or not, those borders are dissolving, replaced by a globalized ecosystem where talent, impact, and resonance no longer hinge on birthplace or Western validation. And this shift is happening in real time, pushed forward by the rise of a Korean singer whose presence has become impossible to ignore in any conversation about worldwide stardom. The emotional undercurrent beneath this debate is palpable. You can feel the tension on social media platforms where battles emerge not from hatred, but from pride. Fans of Chalamet defend his artistic credibility, pointing to his depth, his critically acclaimed performances, his cultural status in Hollywood's elite circles. Fans of Harry Styles defend his gender-defying fashion choices, his legacy with One Direction, his Grammy wins, his commanding stage presence. Yet fans of Jungkook step forward not with words first, but with proof. Screenshots, statistics, records, engagement numbers that seem to defy logic, viral moments that erupt without marketing, a resonance that transcends entertainment categories entirely. And maybe that is where the heart of the debate truly lies. Jungkook's influence is not confined to one industry. While Chalamet shapes cinema and Styles shapes fashion and music, Jungkook shapes everything simultaneously. Music trends, fashion sales, brand direction, digital culture, streaming habits, even global social media behavior. His influence is not segmented. It is holistic, sweeping across platforms and industries with the ease of someone who is simply living his life. And this raises the question American media keeps circling around but rarely says out loud. How do you compete with someone who isn't competing at all? As the conversation deepens, so does the discomfort among old-guard cultural critics. They're forced to confront an inevitable truth. The language of influence has changed. No longer defined by film festivals, magazine exclusives, or award ceremonies, influence today exists in the collective pulse of global audiences who decide for themselves who they want to elevate. This is not the Hollywood-driven era where studios engineered icons. This is an era where the people choose their icons. And the people, according to every measurable metric available, have chosen Jungkook. Yet the resistance persists, wrapped in carefully phrased arguments about industry legacy, cultural proximity, and artistic prestige. Critics question whether Jungkook's dominance is sustainable. They argue that virality is not the same as longevity. They cling to the idea that Western industries remain the primary stage for defining timeless celebrity. But those arguments grow weaker each time Jungkook trends worldwide with no promotion. Each time a snippet becomes a global phenomenon, each time a casual appearance hijacks the internet. Meanwhile, GQ's comparison, expected to spark curiosity, ended up igniting a cultural flashpoint. What the publication may not have anticipated was how quickly the question would spiral beyond entertainment into something far more complex, a debate about relevance, power, and the changing architecture of fame. Why does Jungkook's presence disrupt the conversation so profoundly? Because he represents the collapse of the traditional gatekeeping system. He represents a globalized future where talent emerges from any place, speaks any language, and carries influence that cannot be controlled or confined by industry elitism. He represents a future where storytelling belongs to everyone, not just those born within Hollywood's orbit. IT is this symbolic weight, this cultural revolution that makes Jungkook more than a pop star. And it is this weight that makes his comparison with Chalamet and Styles feel less like a simple media exercise and more like an unavoidable confrontation with the truth. The era of Western monopoly over global stardom is ending. But what makes the debate even more emotionally charged is the sincerity behind each fandom's loyalty. Chalamet fans admire his vulnerability, his softness, his quiet defiance of masculine stereotypes. Harry Styles fans cherish his evolution, his courage, his artistic freedom. Jungkook fans love his humility, his work ethic, his authenticity, the way he inspires without demanding attention. These emotional connections are not trivial. They are the glue that binds global culture together. And when emotional investment meets public debate, the result is always explosive. Still, beyond the emotions, beyond the fan battles, beyond the headlines predicting cultural collapse or cultural transformation, one question lingers like a shadow across every commentary, every thread, every article. Why Jungkook?
Why now?
Why him? Some say it is because he came from BTS, a group that redefined what global music could be. Some say it is because he represents the ideal blend of talent, humility, and star power. Some say it is because he connects with global audiences in a way Western celebrities cannot, thanks to the authenticity embedded in Korean artist culture. Others argue that his rise was inevitable, the perfect storm of timing, technology, and talent converging at the right moment. But what if the real answer is this? Jungkook is the first global icon of a new era, an era not defined by Hollywood or even the West, but by the world itself.